What if the most valuable thing in your childhood bedroom was not gold, not jewelry, not a painting, but a tiny plastic toy you once threw across the room? In 2024, a 1979 Kenner rocket-firing Boba Fett action figure sold at auction for $1,342,000, more than many homes, luxury cars, and even some fine art pieces. It was never sold in stores. It was a prototype, a mistake, a cancelled toy, and somehow that made it priceless. So the real question is not, why would someone pay $1 million for a toy? The real question is, what does that toy make them feel? Vintage toys sit in a strange place in the human mind. They are objects made for children, but often bought by adults. They were once cheap, mass-produced pieces of plastic, metal, or cloth. They lived in toy boxes, under beds, in dusty attics. They were scratched, chewed, lost, broken, and forgotten. But decades later, the same toys began appearing behind glass cases, sealed in acrylic, graded like diamonds, and sold under bright auction lights. A doll became an asset. An action figure became a trophy. A toy became proof that memory can have a market value. And in this market, scarcity, nostalgia, identity, and fear all collide. To understand how vintage toys became million-dollar collectibles, we have to go back to a time before toys were investments. For most of the 20th century, toys were simple products. Parents bought them, children played with them, then they disappeared. A toy's purpose was to be used, a truck was pushed across the floor, a Barbie was dressed and redressed, a Star Wars figure was buried in sand, dropped in water, or carried in a pocket until the paint faded. Nobody was thinking about mint condition. Nobody was thinking about auction premiums. Nobody was thinking, one day this little figure might pay for a house. And that is exactly why the surviving ones became valuable. Because the toy industry was never built to preserve toys. It was built to destroy them through play. Then came the great shift. In the late 1970s and 1980s, entertainment and toys fused together. Movies, cartoons, comics, and action figures became part of the same machine. A child no longer just watched a hero on screen. They could hold that hero in their hand. Star Wars changed the rhythm of the toy business. Characters became collectibles, worlds became product lines, childhood bedrooms became tiny museums of pop culture. But back then, the most important pieces were not always obvious. The rarest toy was not always the one with the biggest marketing campaign. Sometimes it was the one that never made it to stores. That is what happened with the rocket-firing Boba Fett. Kenner designed a version of the character with a small missile that could launch from his backpack. It sounded exciting, it looked futuristic. It was exactly the kind of thing a child would want, but safety concerns changed everything. The toy was never released to the public, most prototypes were destroyed, only a small number survived. Guinness World Records notes that around 100 examples were made, and gold in auctions sold one for $1.342 million in August 2024. This is the strange logic of collectible economics. Failure created rarity, cancellation created mythology, destruction created value. A toy that children never got to play with became one of the most desired toys in the world. And this pattern repeated again and again. Collectors began hunting for unopened boxes, rare versions, factory errors, prototypes, cancelled releases, unusual paint colors, and packaging variations. Heritage Auctions says the most desirable vintage action figures and toys are often from the 1960s through the 1980s, sealed in original packaging, professionally graded or tied to rare errors, variations, prototypes, and original packaging artwork. The toy market started to behave less like a toy market and more like the art market. Condition mattered, provenance mattered, authenticity mattered, the story mattered. A loose toy could be worth something, but a sealed toy, that was different. A sealed toy was time travel. It said, this object survived childhood untouched. It escaped sticky hands, broken corners, sunlight, dust, and decades of ordinary life. And the fewer that survived, the more powerful the object became. The value of vintage toys is not just about plastic, it is about scarcity. Scarcity changes the brain's relationship with desire. When people believe something is rare, they do not simply evaluate it as an object. They evaluate it as an opportunity that may disappear. Research on collectible markets has found that scarcity cues can increase fear of missing out, and that FOMO can raise willingness to pay for premium collectible products. That is why collectors can become emotional during auctions. They are not only bidding against other people, they are bidding against regret. The thought is not just, do I want this? The thought is, will I ever get another chance? This is where economics becomes psychological. In a normal market, price often follows usefulness. A chair is valuable because you can sit on it. A phone is valuable because you can use it. But a $1 million toy is not useful in the ordinary sense. You do not open it, you do not play with it. You protect it from the very thing it was created for. Its value comes from meaning, and meaning is not stable. It grows when people agree to believe in it. A rare toy is a social contract between collectors. One person says, this matters. Another person says, I agree. Then an auction house confirms it. A grading company seals it. A headline spreads it, and suddenly the toy is no longer a toy. It is a cultural artifact. This is why nostalgia is so powerful. Nostalgia does not just remind people of the past, it edits the past. It softens it. It turns childhood into a place that feels simpler, safer, and more emotionally pure. Studies on nostalgic consumption show that feelings of nostalgia can influence people's desire to buy products connected to the past. That is why a 50-year-old collector may pay thousands for a toy they once owned as a child. They are not only buying the object, they are buying the feeling of walking into a toy store again, the smell of cardboard, the bright packaging, the birthday gift they never received, the Saturday morning cartoon, the version of themselves that had no mortgage, no deadlines, no aging parents, no career pressure. A vintage toy can become an emotional machine. It compresses memory into matter. But nostalgia alone does not create million-dollar prices. For that, nostalgia needs scarcity. A common toy may trigger memory. A rare toy triggers memory plus competition, and competition changes everything. When collectors know that only a few examples exist, status enters the room. Owning the rarest version is not just private happiness. It becomes public identity. The collector is no longer just a fan. They become a guardian, an expert, a person with access, a person who owns what almost nobody else can own. In high-end collecting, the object becomes a signal. It says, I have taste, I have knowledge, I have patience, I have money, and most importantly, I got there before you. This is where vintage toys begin to resemble luxury watches, rare cars, comic books, and fine art. The object itself is small, but the status around it is huge. Still, there is a darker side, because once prices rise, markets attract a different kind of buyer. Not the child inside the adult, but the investor inside the adult. This happened dramatically with Beanie Babies in the 1990s. Small plush toys that once sold for a few dollars became the center of a speculative craze. Scarcity, retirements, resale hype, and internet marketplaces pushed buyers to believe prices would keep rising. But when confidence broke, many values collapsed. The week described how Beanie Babies became a lesson that scarcity alone does not guarantee future price gains. That is the danger inside every collectible market. When people buy because they love the item, value has emotional support. When people buy only because they believe someone else will pay more later, the market becomes fragile. The toy stops being memory. It becomes a bet, and every bet needs a future buyer. This is the financial reality behind million-dollar collectibles. Prices can rise sharply because the supply is tiny and global demand is emotional. But the same market can also be illiquid, unpredictable, and vulnerable to hype. A stock can be sold in seconds. A rare toy may need the right auction, the right timing, the right buyers, the right story, and the right cultural moment. That is why condition and authentication became so important. Collectors want certainty. They want proof that the item is real. They want proof that it has not been repaired, repainted, resealed, or faked. They want a number on a label that turns emotion into a measurable score. This is how the market transforms childhood objects into financial instruments. The toy is graded, the box is sealed, the history is documented, the photos are published, the auction begins, and then the room waits, not for a child to play, but for adults to compete. Here is the deeper truth. Vintage toys became million-dollar collectibles because adults do not simply outgrow childhood. They carry it with them. And when those adults finally have money, they often use it to repair old emotional gaps. The toy they could not afford, the figure their parents never bought, the collection they sold too early, the box they opened before they knew it mattered. Every collector market contains a hidden sentence. I want that moment back. But the tragedy is that the moment cannot truly return. So the object becomes a substitute. A sealed action figure becomes a sealed memory. A rare doll becomes a doorway. A small plastic figure becomes proof that the past was real. And this is why people sometimes pay irrational prices for emotionally rational reasons. From the outside, it looks absurd. From the inside, it feels like rescue. The collector is not buying plastic. They are buying continuity. They are connecting who they were with who they became. And in a world where everything moves fast, where childhood disappears, where culture constantly updates itself, a vintage toy feels like something fixed, something saved, something that survived. So why did vintage toys become million-dollar collectibles? Because scarcity gave them economic value, nostalgia gave them emotional value, status gave them social value, and markets gave them a stage where all three could be measured in dollars. But the most powerful force was never the plastic. It was the human need to hold on, to memory, to identity, to a time when the world felt smaller, to a version of life that can never be reopened once the box is broken. So the next time you see an old toy behind glass, do not just ask why it costs so much. Ask what it is really selling. Is it rarity? Is it status? Is it investment? Or is it something far more human, for the price of wanting childhood back?